Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. This is my weekly reading vlog. We are getting this vlog started on Sunday evening. I finished yesterday The Secret Keepers of Old Depot Grocery by Amanda Cox, which I was buddy reading. And this works very well for the historical fiction reading challenge that is happening in June. And one of the prompts was to read a book with dual timelines or more, I guess. And this one definitely had two timelines going at once. The secondary timeline started in the 60s and then kind of kept moving forward until it caught up with present day. So it fit for that prompt. And it was very good. I buddy read it with Lauren and we had a really great time. There were a lot of quotes that we found that we were sharing with each other, very insightful truths and thoughts that really inspired us or moved us. And the story itself was very enjoyable. It's definitely, if you want to categorize it, it's probably in like women's fiction kind of story. It tells the story of 3 generations of women and the secrets that they keep from each other and the effect that has on their relationship with one another and the consequences that happen because of that. And everything gets tied up at the end in a nice little knot, which is good. And it has a very satisfactory ending. It's kind of a bit of a slow moving, thoughtful pace, but not too slow, especially because it goes back and forth in the timelines and you're getting caught up on what was happening in the past that is affecting the present. And so it doesn't feel like it's moving very slowly, but the whole span of the story doesn't actually, of the present day story, doesn't cover a great deal of time. It's only a matter of weeks, honestly, I think. So it doesn't move very quickly through the present day, but because you're moving quickly from 1965 through to the present day, it feels like faster paced. So overall, it's very enjoyable. 4 stars is where I'm ending up with this. And this also means I can check Amanda Cox off the list of Christian fiction authors that I wanted to try that I had not yet. So I have now read a book by Amanda Cox and now I would like to try her other one. She has several other titles that sound really interesting to me that I would like to read. So because I crossed that one off of my reading list, as well as Evangeline by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, I picked up a couple more books. This is for Chantel's Read Your Shelf Challenge. The prompt for June was bird, and we have peacock feathers here on the cover of this, The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. But it also works for the Historical Fiction Reading Challenge, and actually, I'm pretty sure that this one will work very well for the alternative history prompt. So what we have here is the history of Eleanor Dare, who was one of the women who was in the lost colony of Roanoke. And it explores a possible history of what could have happened to her and to her descendants. So that is an alternative take on history, or what we know about history. As far as we know, she didn't actually have any living descendants that survived that time. So all of that is just sheer story. It's imagined. It has no connection to reality. What we do know to be true about what happened to the Roanoke colony, I believe they stick with that. The author sticks with that. But because there's so much that is not known, the rest of it, she just makes it up as if it's true, but it's not reality. So it fits for that prompt for the Historical Fiction Reading Challenge, which is great because I did have an option for that, and it's a book I've been wanting to read, but I think this fits a lot better. It is very much outside of my normal scope of reading though, because it does have kind of hard to describe. I don't know if it's like, it's not quite magical realism elements. It's more like maybe supernatural kind of, like these women supposedly have some kind of gift, I guess you could call it, of like knowledge that they are passing down from one to the other. And it kind of adds maybe a mystical aspect to the story, which is not normally the vein of things that I typically read. And it's not my favorite thing either, but I'm gonna read through this story because it is my only bird option for the Chantel Creature Shelf Challenge. And because, you know, unless there's something terrible that happens in here that makes me not want to read anymore, I'm just going to keep going through so that I can finish it and also cross it off for that book for the historical fiction reading challenge. And also, so I know if I want to keep it on my shelf or pass it along. The other thing that I will say about it is I feel like the narration was written by someone with ADD, because my husband is giving me a big smile because I have a great deal of experience with this, conversing with people who have ADD. I won't say who, but he's sitting right there. Anyway, so it jumps around quite a bit. The train of thought. It's all told from this woman's perspective. I believe her name is Alice, and she has a daughter, Penn, and she's in the line of descendants of Eleanor Dare, supposedly. And it's all from her perspective, and it's like her thoughts just flit from one thing to another, and it's a little bit tricky trying to keep up with what in the world she's talking about. And how did this thought lead to that thought? Like, it's a little disconcerting and a little disjointed. So that is another aspect about it that I don't love as much, but I am intrigued as to where the story is going. And the setting is very cool. It is actually in Georgia at an imagined like plantation sort of farm with an old house, an old property, and mysteries and secrets there. And it's an interesting setting, and there's a lot of things that I want to find out about different characters and different things that she keeps referencing. So it's enough to make me want to keep reading. It's not been like a slog or anything. So, and I also picked up volume 6 of the Emma M. Lyons series and enjoying that one very much. This one, I feel like maybe it derails just a little bit into some things that are just really silly, but it still has all of the typical charm that they've had so far. Emma M. Lyons' narration in her journal entries is just, it's very whimsical and it's very humorous, occasionally self-deprecating, and just fun to read. And then all of the various characters that she meets, they're all so very unique, and they're all so individually drawn in such an interesting way. And there's always something new happening in every journal entry. It just really keeps you reading. And there have been a couple of scenes already that were laugh out loud humorous scenes that I really enjoyed. So looking forward to finishing that one. I am not quite halfway through that. And the next thing that I need to pick up is Shiloh by Lori Benton, which is the second book in her series. The first one was Mountain Laurel, which I read in May. And I read that for Jane's Christian Fiction Reading Challenge, which was to read a book set in the South. And it was set in the South somewhere. I don't know where exactly, but it was set in the South. And then the next book, Shiloh, is a one-word title, which goes for the same reading challenge. So once I have read that, the only other thing I have on my necessary TBR is Mansfield Park, which I am about, I guess, a third of the way through here. Maybe not quite, between 25 and 30%. And I haven't read this much over the weekend, but I am hoping to get quite a bit of the way through it this week. And this will go for the 250th anniversary celebration of Jane Austen's birthday, as well as the Reading the Classics Challenge, which is to read a book longer than 500 pages. Mansfield Park itself is not that long, I don't think, but this annotated edition is over 800 pages, so that works. So that and Shiloh are the only other books I have to read. Other than that, I am reading for fun, including the Emma M. Lyon. I'm reading at least volume 6. I might read volume 7. And then I have I just want to read some for the historical fiction readathon, because that is my favorite genre, and I want to read 1 or 2 more for that. I think I'm going to just chuck my pile of possibilities that I had started with at the beginning of the month, with the possible exception of The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Post, that one is still on the table, but I think the one I will pick up next for that reading challenge is Salt to the Sea, which I picked up this really beautiful hardcover copy over the weekend. I found it at the library sale, and so I really want to read this one. And Ruta Sepetys books, because they're YA, they're quick reads, and they have very short, like, look at this chapter. They have very short chapters, which makes it move really quickly. And they're usually very engrossing stories. So I think that one I've put on my TBR in place of other ones. And I think that one will go for being about a particular event in history for the historical fiction readathon. And then the Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Post will be a book highlighting an actual person. And if I do get to these two, then that means that I will have fulfilled almost all of the challenges with the historical fiction readathon. So hopefully that will turn out to be the case. So that is what I am currently reading and what my plans are, hoping to get to at some point during the course of this week. And we will see how it goes. Hopefully everyone stays well this week, and hopefully I'm not too busy. I do have some things on the schedule this week, but hopefully we can get a lot of reading done as well. So that is it for now, and I will check in later this week. Later the same day, I forgot to mention something that I just think it's interesting, and I want to pay more attention to it and try to remember to mention it when I make my reading vlogs. I often find that there are connecting links between books I'm reading, either the books that I'm reading simultaneously or the books I read subsequently, if that's the right way to put that. And there are a couple of different connections between all the books that I've been reading recently. So first of all, in Evangeline, that I read last week, the story centers around a young couple that is engaged, and they are separated by the war. The French and English war, the English have taken control of Acadia, and so they're kicking out all the Acadians and forcing them to live elsewhere in the colonies. And so Evangeline is separated from her fiance, and it's about her search for him. Then in The Secret Keepers of Old Depot Grocery, that is one of the story threads. Now, the plot is a lot more complex in this book. There's a lot more going on, and there are other things happening, but a significant portion of the plot is very similar. There is an engaged couple at the beginning of the story, and the man is lost in the Vietnam War, and he dies, and then the girl, it's about, how she grapples with losing him and what happens in her life after that, and, decades of them being apart. So there's that thread. So now I am reading The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. In this one, we don't have the separated lovers storyline. Instead, we have something different. This is the connecting storyline of women, a line of women in their generations. And that is an echo of The Secret Keepers of Old Depot Grocery, because like I said, we have 3 generations of women and the secrets that they keep from each other, and the ways that it affects them and their relationship with each other, and the legacy that they leave for each other, and what they learn from each other, and what is passed down from one to the next. And it also centers around the Old Depot Grocery, which is kind of a place, a setting that is a common link between all of them besides their ancestry. And so this is very similar in that we have 2 women who are alive. Well, there's a woman and her 13-year-old daughter who is on the cusp of womanhood. And frequent mention is made of the woman's mother, who has passed away before the story starts, but she's very much present in this story, and we get a lot of her story as well, her backstory. And so it's very similar in that sense to this one. So I just thought that was cool. It hit me as I was reading this. I was like, there are very similar threads connecting these 2 stories here. And I don't know, thought it was interesting. Hello, it is Tuesday evening, and I have a little bit of a haul to show you. First of all, I was at a thrift store the other day. Let's see. Yeah. 2 things from the same thrift store. The first thing, it was like, I mean, I have to get it. I absolutely have to get it. And that is the Oregon Trail card game. And my husband and my son and I played it last night, and none of us survived, sadly. Two of us died of snake bites, and one of us died of dysentery. My husband made it the farthest. He made it 80% of the way through the game before succumbing to the dysentery. So sad. But we had fun playing it. And I also picked up a book I should not have, because my Christian nonfiction shelves are full to bursting with books I have not read yet. And I have not done well this year with my intention to be reading a Christian nonfiction at all times, like to always have one going. I have one, I've been carrying it in my bag, my book bag, for like a month and a half or more. Have I actually read it? Not past the first page or two, no. I forget which one it is. It's by Elisa Childers, and might be her latest one. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, I'm sure it's a wonderful book. I'm sure I should be reading it, but I'm not, and I need to. I also need to keep reading all of them. But anyway, I found this book, and it's one I've been wanting. It's been on my mental TBR for a while. It was on sale at the thrift store, so it was only $1.50, and that is The Gospel Comes with a House Key by Rosaria Butterfield. And yeah, I bought it, and I'll find a place for it on my shelf somewhere. And now this one, I will not keep this one, but I will read it at some point. It's one of the Shakespeares that are on my 50 by 50. And when I see the No Fear Shakespeares, I snap them up. So I will use it when I read it, but then I will get rid of it after that. So it doesn't have a permanent home on my shelf. I picked this up today at Second and Charles, which is a used bookstore. I went and brought a bunch of games and a few books from our house. And while I was there, I brought them to for them to buy from me, to sell them to them, however you want to put that. And so I did a little browsing while I was there, and yeah, I found the No Fear Shakespeare. It was on clearance for like $1, so snapped that up. This was also on clearance, but it was $5. However, it is in beautiful condition, and it is a beautiful copy of this book, 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup, which in People April, I think there were a couple of people who read this memoir and were talking about it. And I have read a couple of slave memoirs in the past, but I've not read this one. And this is one of the famous ones. So I definitely want to be reading this one. And it's just, this cover is beautiful. And it's in perfect condition. And here's what the actual cover looks like in the spine. I mean, this is just a really beautiful book. And $5 seems a lot for a clearance book of this size, especially since, like, I look at the original price and it was $8 whenever it was originally printed, but still, it's a book I've been wanting to read, and it's a beautiful edition. So I picked that up. I'm running out of room on my biographies and memoir shelf, but you know, that's a worthy one to put on there, I think. So that was my little mini haul. Not much to update in terms of what I'm reading. I did want to say, well, I guess I do have two updates. One regarding The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare, which I'm reading. I'm still struggling with the narration style, which is definitely skipping around a lot. And the dialogue seems disjointed. But I am curious. I do want to know what's going to happen. I feel also like the author is not very focused in her themes, but it may be too soon to say that for sure, but it feels like we're just, oh, let's throw in this idea here, this, thematic element, and let's throw this in too. And we've got, stuff about marriage and reasons people get married and intergenerational relationships and dealing with insanity and the causes of insanity, and like there's a lot, and it just seems unfocused. It feels like a very ADD book. But at the same time, I'm curious and I want to find out what's happening. So it's not a slog to read, but I don't think it's going to be, in my top 10 books of this year or, anything like that. It's going to be interesting and it's going to be okay, but it's not my favorite book, I don't think. And then at Mansfield Park, something that has been striking me this time around, and is a theory I'm kind of like flirting with. I feel like the real story here is Mariah and Julia Bertram. Like, that's the real story. And we just are seeing that story through the eyes of Fanny. Fanny is the vehicle for telling that story. Fanny's story isn't the real story. It's really Mariah and Julia Bertram and Henry Crawford and Mary Crawford as well. And I think that Austen is using these characters to explore variety of vices and the ways people get tangled up in selfishness and their selfish desires and where it leads them, and the jealousies that creates, and the fractured relationships and the poor decisions, all that kind of stuff, seen through the eyes of Fanny, who doesn't necessarily, she's kind of free of all of that. And she's just an observant bystander because she's always on the outside of the action, but we're always being informed of her view of it, of what the action is. We're looking at all of this vice through the lens of virtue, which is Fanny. So I think that's really interesting. And I'm kind of like reading it with that lens in mind. So that's my update for now. And I will check in later this week. Hello, my friends. It is Wednesday afternoon, and I have just finished reading The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 6. And I thought I would just share my thoughts about that as I am updating my reading journals. First of all, in this one, I just record everything as I read it. So let's see if I can talk and write at the same time. All of the Emma M. Lyon series have been 5 stars for me. This one, I wasn't sure that it actually was going to be for the first third to half of it, because there was just some stuff at the beginning. I don't even remember now what it was. I just remember feeling like it was too silly, maybe. Like the shenanigans were just too much. All of the books, they're very whimsical. They're very zany to an extent. It usually doesn't cross the line for me to being too zany or too unpredictable or unbelievable, because there's enough charm in it, there's enough whimsy, there's enough wit, there's enough depth that it makes it worth it. It offsets, it balances, if that makes sense. But I wasn't feeling that initially in this book. But as it went along, it redeemed itself. And by the end of the book, I was like, okay, it's another 5 star. It's another 5 star. So we're going to go with that. Some of these I am not going to fill in at the moment because I need my phone, and my phone is recording. So, because I don't know exactly the day that I started reading it. Fiction genre, I mean, epistolary, I guess, right? Kindle Unlimited is where I found this. Very thankful for that. I got 3 months for 99 cents a month, and it ends in July. And so I need to read 2 more Emma M. Lyons, and there's 1 book that is on my July TBR that is on Kindle Unlimited. So that will be nice. The main character or subject is, of course, Emma M. Lyon. Now, do I have a little picture of the cover for this one? I don't know if I do. And I haven't been able to print most of the covers for the books that I've read in, let's see, this is volume, I don't know, it's green. It's not the one I need. Have not been able to print pictures of the titles that I've read in June, several of them, because my printer ran out of ink and we had to order it. And so that took a bit, but it just came today. It was just delivered. However, I am not sure how to put it in. So going to have my husband do that at some point, maybe tomorrow, so I can print out those covers. But I do have Emma M. Lyon. So volume 6 is the cream ivory colored one. You can see. Okay, why does that focus less? I don't know. Anyways, gonna pop that in here. I have my little handy Little Woman pouch bag that I keep glue stick, scissors, star rating stickers, and all my necessary journaling pens and pencils, as well as annotation tools if I do annotating, which I don't do very often. So I'm going to put that in there. And then I love these star stickers that I get from, oh, is the name on here? I order them on Etsy, but you can also, they have a separate website as well that you can order from. They have all different kinds of journaling and planning stickers. Sorry, because I'm in front of the window, the lighting keeps changing. Yellow gel pen and color in my rating here. The ending of this one was such a cliffhanger, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. If you have been reading along on the M.M. Lion series and you have read volume 6, tell me, did you like that ending? Were you happy with that progression of things or not? I'm not fully on board with what's going on there. We'll have to see. If you would ask me like 3 books ago, I might have been rooting for that. But now, I don't think so. I'm rooting in a different direction. So tell me what you think. All right, so I'm going to say whimsical and charming as always. The bookish quotes I love. Emma M. Lyon is a reader, so even from the very first one, the very first volume, she periodically makes these comments that you can just really relate to as a reader, as far as like, you know, planning what she's going to read for that month, or her feelings finishing a book, or just readery things. I really love that. Not sure how I feel about the ending. Quite the cliffhanger. Maybe too whimsical at times. The other thing I would say is that I feel like in the very beginning, Beth Brower, the author, did a really good job of making them seem like actual journal entries. But now that we're further in, Emma M. Lyon is like, she's relaying entire conversations rather than the gist of a conversation, all of this dialogue and other things that I don't feel would necessarily be in a journal. Like, it's not as realistic in a journal. On the other hand, you know, I don't mind hearing these conversations and dialogues. That's part of the give and take of the epistolary format, because it can be either unrealistic or unsatisfying, because if it doesn't have the whole dialogue, you know, you're left with less, right? So quality of writing. This journal has 3 categories that you can rate on a scale of 1 to 5. Quality of writing, 5 stars. Strength of characters, 5 stars. I'm going to go with 4 stars for the plot for this one because I have concerns. So that is that. But I also have a place up at the beginning where there's space for 100 books, which is my goal for the year. So, and this is book number 41, the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 6. Book number 41 for the year. So that journal, done. Now, I don't think there's anything. Oh, yes. This is the journal that I started last year, and it's falling apart. But I have some things in here that I'm still tracking. And one of them is my 5-star reads, and I still have room on that page. So let me add that one. Volume 5 was also on this list. Okay. Was not from my shelf, so I can't mark that off. I don't think there is anything I need to add this to. It doesn't go for any of my challenges. It didn't introduce me to a new place on the map. It may end up being a favorite of June, but June's not over yet. And it does not fit any of the historical fiction prompts or journeys with inklings. So last one. This is my new journal that I had to start because that other one not only is falling apart, but it doesn't have any more empty pages. And so I have the summer book bingo here. So this is the last thing I need to do. I need to plug this in somewhere. So book in a series, that could definitely fit. Set in summer, no, it was set in January and February, which was a little weird to be reading in June, but you know, whatever, that doesn't really matter. A popular book, refreshing. We'll go with book in a series. That makes the most sense. So on this one, I am using a red pen and making circles to fill in the books. So I have 3 so far in this column. Let me make that a little bigger. 3 in that column. And I need to fill it in over here. Book in a series. The unselected journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 6. Updated that. Nice. This has, I did not realize this has 2 ribbons. So I can put them in the 2 spreads I'm working on, the summer book bingo and the big book summer. Okay, so I am still reading Mansfield Park. My goal this week is to get at least through the halfway mark. Maybe, I guess I should say, I would love to be beyond the halfway mark, but at a minimum, the halfway mark. And I'm really kind of close. I probably have about 60, 75 pages to get there. So that's totally doable. And if I can get further, so much the better. Then I don't have as much to read next week in Mansfield Park. And then in the Lost Book of Eleanor Dare, I am not loving the experience of reading it. I feel like I've already expressed that, so I won't say too much more about it, but I am wanting to push through it and finish reading it. So I am a little over halfway through it right now at this point. And so I'm going to focus on that and try and finish that one up and mark that one off. Because next I put on my Kindle Shiloh by Lori Benton. And that is, I think, besides Mansfield Park, I think it's the only other one that I need to finish all of my challenge ones, you know, like yearly challenge ones for the month of June. Beyond that, there are a couple of books that I want to read for the historical fiction reading challenge. So one is this one, Lady with the Dark Hair. The other is, I don't see it. Where'd it go? Maybe I put it in my book bag to keep handy. It's the one by Alison Pataki about Marjorie Post. The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Post, I believe. I really want to read that one. So that will be a priority. I'd like to get to the Lady with the Dark Hair, but I don't know if I'll have time. So anyway, that is what I've got on deck right now. So we'll see. Good morning, friends. It is Thursday morning, and I am almost finished with The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. I am hoping to finish it today. You can see where my bookmark is. I have fewer than 100 pages left. Maybe only even like 50, I don't know. Anyway, warning, a bit of a rant ahead. So I've made it this far, so I'm going to finish, but this book is probably not going to get a very high rating from me. I've already talked about the narrative style, that it feels disjointed and distracted to me and disconnected. And that has not been very enjoyable, first of all. And there are a couple of other issues that I have with the book. Some of them that are just me and my personal response to the book and what it's saying. And one thing is the content of the book itself, like that is an issue with the book itself. Like, it's titled The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare, and it's supposed to be about what really happened to Eleanor Dare and her descendants. And it is, but it's also not. Like, if you're looking for a historical fiction novel about that topic, you're not going to get very much of that. We're only looking at that in retrospect. Someone is telling the story it's like handwritten in a journal, but it's still in retrospect. Does that make sense? It's someone in a later generation writing down the oral history, basically, that was handed down. And it does give you the author's imagination of what happened with Eleanor Dare. And it's a driving point in the story, but it's not dwelt on, if that makes sense. It's not something that we spend a lot of time with. It's more a looking back. It's causal in what is happening now in the story, but it's not current. So it's not as much about that. And also, I feel like not only is the narration distracted and disjointed, flitting from thing to thing, the author is touching on so many aspects of history and issues. Like, it's set during World War II, and it's dealing with issues related to that. But then it's also dealing with issues related with slavery to a certain extent, which I understand because it's set on a farm that used to be a plantation, and it makes sense to kind of touch on that. But it's like the author couldn't focus on one thing. Like, it was just, I have to include all of this stuff in this book, and it leads to a very unfocused experience for me. So there's that. As far as my personal response to the book, there are two areas that it's really, I find it is a strong word because it doesn't offend me. It's just, I completely disagree with the stance that the book is taking on a couple of different things. One is the author seems to be fairly dismissive of Christianity, of religious belief. She dismisses it, first of all, as a male idea. Particularly one woman in the story, she has this point where she has like this spiritual vision or whatever, but it's brought on by drinking what's called bitter water or charged water or something like that. This vision is brought on, but she passes it off to her father as a spiritual vision. But in her mind and in her heart, she feels very superior because she knows that it wasn't a divine spiritual vision from God. She knows she's like, it's from within, from herself, whatever. It's from the charged water. It's from some other power, but it makes her feel very superior to her father and to all men who, have these devout religious beliefs or whatever. So the author seems to be taking a stance against Christianity in favor of more occultish things. And there's a lot of conversation in this book. There's a lot woven into this intergenerational female story, is the idea of women having mysteries and powers, divine powers, secret powers, spiritual powers, whatever, and passing them on to their children in the form of, visions and charms and potions. And one of the characters, she feels, it's the same one, she feels very superior to the men in her community because she's able to ward off certain illnesses and terrible things by using potions and, scattering herbs around her bed or her house or whatever, that kind of stuff. So kind of like witchcraft sort of stuff. So there are some elements of that in here. And so from a personal standpoint, from a belief standpoint, I just completely disagree with that. And so that's not raising the book in my esteem personally. And then there's also that element of the blatant feminism, which I feel like requires a little bit of explanation. So a long time ago when I was a teenager, and for some reason it's one of those, conversations that you have with someone that sticks in your brain and that you like mull over it for many years, you never forgot it. Someone asked me when I was a teenager if I was a feminist, and I said no, but I would have been a suffragette. Side note, the person with whom I was speaking did not know what a suffragette is, which I found appalling in all of my teenage superiority. I couldn't understand how someone could not know what that was. But anyway, I would say that today, 30 some years later, my answer would be very much the same. I think that I myself, everybody who knows me will tell you, I am a strong, independent woman, and I know my mind, and I make my own decisions, and I believe quite strongly that women are independent humans with independent rights, irrespective of their position in life as wife, mother, daughter, etc. However, at the same time, I believe that women are different from men, and that the things that make a woman different from a man are things that should be honored, appreciated, respected, and glorified, not denigrated or held in contempt or despised. And it seems to me that modern feminism hates men and everything that men represents, but at the same time hates everything about being a woman and wants the woman to be the man. And to me, that's a completely, what's the word? Untenable situation. Like, that's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have it both ways. You can't hate man and want to be man. Then you hate everything. And there is nothing to strive for, nothing to enjoy, nothing to love, nothing to nourish or nurture in yourself. And it only leads to bitterness. And that's the part I don't like when I am reading books with, give me a strong female character, 100%. Give me an independent woman, absolutely. But the bitterness about being a woman, combined with the simultaneous hatred of everything that makes me a man, it's not pleasant to read. It's not enjoyable. And it's in this book in spades. Well, okay. It's not constant in the narrative. It is ever present in the actual storyline, because we're dealing with generations of women. It's part of what the author is trying to say. We have a mother and a daughter that are the primary focus of this story, and are living in, during World War II. But the mother is like always looking back at her, she looks back at her life with her father and her husband, who have both passed away at this point in the story. And she just makes disparaging mental commentary about her life with them and how she was stifled, even though she was like the accounts manager at the gas station / auto repair shop that her father owned, and that her husband also worked at. I don't know, her husband was a mechanic. I'm not exactly sure what his role was, but she was an active person in managing, like, she was entrusted with that. She was given a vital role, but she felt stifled by basically being a wife and a mom. And she wasn't a very good mom, actually. Her daughter was better at mothering her than she was at mothering her daughter in this story. And I just don't need that kind of negativity in my life. So I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to cross it off my list and be glad I read it, but I don't need to read any more by this author. And someone said, Shannon McNair, who I've read one book by her, and it was very good. So I'm going to look for this book. Someone recommended in a Goodreads review that I was reading, Eleanor by Shannon McNair, because Shannon McNair took the story of Eleanor Dare and made a fictional novel about it. And someone said, if you really want a good, well-researched story about Eleanor Dare in a fictional form, then you should read that one. It's way better than this one. So I put that on my TBR, on my Goodreads, and I'm interested in reading that one. So this is a very long weekly reading vlog, I think, because I think each of my clips have been at least 10 minutes. So I'm really sorry about that. It's going to be a chatty one, but I've been spending a lot of time reading. So, and I have a little more extra time this week, and I'm not stressed out like I was last week. So hopefully it will be interesting. Anyway, apologies, but today's Thursday, so if I have any more clips, they should be pretty short. I am starting Shiloh by Lori Benton, and I'm really enjoying her writing. Her writing is top-notch, excellent writing. The storyline, it's a little bit too much telenovela soap opera for me. Not that it's completely unrealistic in the time and the place in which it's set. It's not. It's just, I think what makes it cross the line into melodrama is that the situation in which the characters find themselves, let's just say the man who created the situation, he he regrets it, he cares about it, etc. Like, if this had actually happened, I don't think the man in question would have cared so much. I think I know for a fact that this sort of thing did in fact happen and does in fact happen. The sort of relationship that takes place. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm being kind of vague. But the man who is responsible for it happening, it's wouldn't have cared. And I can understand having a come to Jesus moment, like, well after the fact. That would be perhaps more believable. But having the come to Jesus moment in the middle of it, on top of being, like, already, like, it's hard to explain it's hard to explain. Let's just say the actual plot, I'm not loving. The writing is fantastic. The setting is great. Now we're in Boston, Massachusetts, post-Revolutionary War. So it's getting into what would be the Regency era in England. And I'm enjoying that time period, and I'm enjoying that glimpse of life in Boston then. We get a lot of pre-revolutionary Boston in historic fiction, but post-revolutionary Boston is very interesting. So I'm enjoying that setting. And I'm already 15% of the way through, which is pretty good. So looking forward to reading more of that. But that's what I've got going on, and I will sign off for now and try not to say too much more when I wrap this up tomorrow. Hello, it's Saturday morning, and it is time for me to wrap up this weekly reading vlog, which has gotten a little bit out of hand, to be honest. Earlier this week, I said my goal was to get halfway through Mansfield Park, and when I said that, I was thinking for some reason that there were like 700 some pages in the book, but there's actually 850. I forgot. So I was not as close to being halfway through as I thought I was. So, and I did not have as much time to read yesterday. So I still have about 60-ish pages left in Mansfield Park to get halfway through this week, which is my goal. So, working on it, but I do have a busy day. I'm going to be hanging out with my sisters, doing things we like to do, like going to library book sales and thrift stores. I did that last week, and I'm going to do it again, apparently. You know, of course, I'm really sad about that. You know, it's going to be a terrible day. But also, I have a party this evening that I'm going to attend, so that will be fun, but it doesn't allow for a great deal of reading. So we will see if I am able to make that goal. And if not, that's okay. But I do need to finish Mansfield Park this coming week, because that's the end of June. And then Emma is in July, and Emma is just as big. So I need to leave all of July open for reading Emma. Although Emma will probably read faster, because Mansfield Park, I read it just last year, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. And even though, like, I'm seeing new things and making new observations and finding new levels of interest in it, in the story, it still is very fresh in my mind. So it's not something that I like. Guys, I'm so terrible with insects and flying creatures. Like, I saw this little bee. It was like a little bigger than a sweat bee, but I don't know, it was just a little bee. And I saw it, and I was watching it make its little progress in front of me, but it was fine. It wasn't bothering me. But for some reason, the minute it went in front of the camera part of my phone and I saw on the screen, I guess because it was bigger or something, it just... And it put the words right out of my head. I don't even know what I was saying. Something about Mansfield Park. I'm having read it last year, and it's still being pretty fresh. So it's not like, ooh, I want to find out what happens, you know, because I already have. And it's been recent enough that it's not like I've forgotten any major details. It's more like pick it up to enjoy myself and immersing myself in that story, not like, ooh, you know, gotta know what happens sort of thing. So, but I do need to finish it this week so I can pick up Emma next week, the week after. That is my plan today, is to finish Mansfield Park. And then secondary plan is to continue reading in Shiloh, because during the course of the next week, I would like to read Salt to the Sea and The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Post. I think I should have time, hopefully, to at least start both of those and finish one, and maybe one will hang on into July. We'll see. And if I can do that, then actually I might be able to make up for some of my books that I'm behind in in my goal for the year to read 100 books, which, you know, is a loose goal, and it's not something that I'm like, oh, I have to. But the past couple of, like, 2-3 years, it's been easy. Like, I've gone over the goal. This year, it's not been easy, and I've not been able to read as much. So it doesn't matter. It's one of those things, like, it doesn't matter, right? It's just, I don't know. If I can make it up, I will. But I'm not going to stress out about it in the meantime. So this coming week, there will be 2 videos from me. One is a tag video that is long overdue. And the other is my July TBR, which I'm very excited about those plans. Okay, the little flying creatures are starting to multiply. Anyway, so those will be coming out on Wednesday and Friday this coming week. And also, I am getting pretty close to having enough product for me to at least open up my Etsy shop. And I've just started the process of actually, like, setting up the site. So it will be ready at some point, hopefully, I think in July. That is the plan. So we shall see. I'm getting excited about that. So I have no idea what to expect, but I'm really having a lot of fun with it. That's for sure. So I hope that people buy it, only because I'm really having a lot of fun putting together the blind dates. And I want to do some book boxes, but those are a little bit harder for me. And I've seen most people on Etsy, when they do a box, it's also a blind date, but I think my book boxes are going to, like, you'll know what you're getting into. And I have ideally 3 different categories of book box types that I want to make. One is like just bookish gifts that are just more generic. So like if somebody has a friend they know loves to read, but they don't know what books to get them or whatever, or the sort of person who can always buy whatever books they want, you know, these bookish gift boxes would have like just a lot of bookish stuff in it, including like the centerpiece would be a book about books kind of thing. So those are bookish gift boxes. And then another one would be classics, like in really nice editions with specific elements that kind of coordinate with the classic, kind of like the literary gift box that you can get the subscription. But that sort of idea, but just a one-off that you can purchase if you want, not a subscription sort of thing. And then finally, I really want to do some vintage ones with vintage books and vintage items in the box. But the thing with the boxes that I'm finding is the bookish gift boxes are easy. Like, it's easy to get that sort of stuff, to buy it and to find it and curate that sort of thing. But the classic and the vintage ones, they're a lot more specific and individual focused, and it takes a lot more time to curate and find those items. So in the end, it may be just prohibitive in terms of time and cost, because then it might end up costing more than it's, you know, really worth to someone, more than most people would want to spend. So I don't know. Like, what would be your price point? I guess, let me ask you, what would be your price point for a box, like, you know, one of those literary mailers? I think I got like I have like a 12 by something, 10 by 12 or something like that size, and about this high, a couple inches, with a book in it, like a vintage or a classic edition, or either a vintage book or like a classic edition book, like a really nice edition, you know, not just Penguin, whatever, you know, Penguin's nice classic edition, but like a hardcover pretty copy, plus 3 to 5 items that go with it. Those items would be varying in terms of their value and size. So it might be a little pair of earrings, or a postcard, a trinket, a notepad, a journal, that kind of stuff, maybe a scarf, a candle, that kind of thing. 3 to 5 items in there. What would be your price point for something like that, either for yourself or to give as a gift to someone? I'm thinking around $30-ish, but I'm not sure if it's possible to curate it and for me to be able to make a profit off of it for that price. It may have to be more. So, and then I'm not sure if that's worth it to someone else, like $45 or $50. So let me know in the comments what you think, what your personal price point would be for that, and that can help me gauge, because I'm not seeing other people doing that idea. So and if you know of someone besides the literary box subscription, if you know of someone who's doing something like that, let me know so I can look it up and do a little research, market research, so to speak, and see what is on offer there. It is really time to close this out. I'm so sorry. If you have made it all the way to the end of this video, I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for sticking with me and listening to me ramble and talk about life and reading and books. And so put a sunshine emoji in the comments. That will just make my day to know that you made it this far, and because I have really been enjoying the sun the past couple of days after the tremendous amount of rain we've been having. So I love seeing a little bit of sunshine. And I will see you in my other videos later this week, and of course next week with another weekly reading vlog. And until then, have a wonderful time. Bye.